Good morning, student. Today we will study definition of the fuel, classification of the chemical fuel, and characteristics of the fuel. So let's start with the definition of the fuel. Fuels. So what is the definition of the fuel? Fuel is a substance which on combustion produces large amount of heat and energy is known as what? Fuel, right? The general chemical reaction of the fuel is the fuel, right, plus oxygen. It produces product plus heat. So this is the general reaction of what your chemical fuel. The example of the fuel are coal. You know the classification of the coal, that is peat, lignite, bituminous, anthracite. These are the examples of the what? Coal. Then liquid fuel, like as a refineries product or product obtained during the refining operation. For example, petrol, diesel, rockel, naphtha, spirit, propellant. So this is the liquid fuel. Even the gaseous fuel, like as a natural gas, compressed natural gas, liquefied natural gas. So these all are the examples of what your fuel. And I will again repeat, the definition of the fuel is what? Fuel is a substance which on combustion produces large amount of heat and energy is known as the fuel. See, the general reaction of the fuel is fuel plus oxygen. It gives product plus heat. And well-known example of the fuel is what? Solid fuel, liquid fuel, and gaseous fuel. Solid fuel example is what? Coal. Liquid fuel example is petroleum product, and the gaseous fuel example is the CNG, LPG, etc. So this is the definition and example of the fuel. Now the next important point is classification of the chemical fuel. See, the chemical fuels are classified into three main types. Number one is the combustion fuel, second one is the spontaneous fuel, and third one is your nuclear reaction. So this is the main classification of the chemical fuels: combustion fuel, spontaneous fuel, and the nuclear reaction. The nuclear reactions are further subclassified into two types, that is nuclear fusion reaction and nuclear fission reaction. The second type is what your spontaneous fuel. The spontaneous fuel example is what your oxidation reduction reaction. The well-known example is what your fuel cell or nickel cadmium rechargeable battery. This is the example of what your the spontaneous fuel. Now this combustion fuel are further subclassified into two main types, in absence of O2 and in presence of O2. The well-known example is what your the wood and coal. So fossil fuel is the main example of what your chemical fuel. So therefore chemical fuel are further subclassified on the basis of occurrence into two types. Which one? Primary and secondary. What is the primary? Primary means naturally available is known as what? Primary fuel. And secondary means what? Which is man-made. This is called as what? Secondary fuel. So fuel are further classified on the basis of occurrence into primary means naturally available and secondary, that is man-made. So the fuel are further subclassified on the basis of their physical state of occurrence. Physical state of occurrence means what? Solid fuel, liquid fuel, and gaseous fuel. So this is the three main classification of the fuel. So the first one is solid fuel, right? These solid fuel are further subclassified into two different types. Which one? First one is primary and second one is the secondary. So this solid fuel primary source is what? Your wood, right? Again, peat, lignite, bituminous, anthracite coal. So this is called as what? Your primary source of solid fuel. Then next one is secondary source. After burning, wood is converted into charcoal or coke, right? So coke is the secondary source or charcoal is the secondary source of what? Your solid fuel. Then the next important type is what? Your liquid fuel. Again the liquid fuel further subclassified into what? Two types, primary and secondary, right? So which is the primary source? The crude oil, right, or vegetable oil. This is the secondary primary source of what? Your liquid fuel. Now this crude oil or vegetable oil, after passing into the industry, then it is converted into the different fractions like as petrol, diesel, naphtha, spirit, propellant. So this is called as what? Secondary source of what? Your liquid fuel. Then last is the gaseous fuel. Again the gaseous fuel further subclassified into two main types, that is primary and secondary. So which one? The primary, natural gas is the primary source, right? And the secondary source is what? Compressed natural gas, CNG, liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, coal gas, producer gas, water gas, even biogas. This is the again the secondary source. So this is the main classification of whatever chemical fuel. So you remember this one, classification of the chemical fuel. Chemical fuel are classified into three main types. Which one? Combustion fuel, spontaneous fuel, and nuclear fuel. In your syllabus, only combustion fuel is included, right? So therefore, combustion fuel are further subclassified into two types. Which one? That is in absence of O2 and in presence of O2. The well-known example is what? Fossil fuel is the well-known example of what? Your combustion fuel or the chemical fuels. Now, these combustion fuel are further subclassified on the basis of what? Their physical state of occurrence. Physical state of occurrence means what? Solid, liquid, and gaseous fuel. So these solid, liquid, and gaseous fuel are further subclassified on the basis of occurrence. Means what? Primary and secondary. What is primary? Primary means naturally available is known as the primary, and secondary means what? Man-made. So for example, solid primary source is what? Wood, peat, lignite, bituminous, anthracite. This is the primary source of what? Your solid fuel. Then secondary means what? Man-made. So after processing onto the wood, it is converted into coal, charcoal, or coke. Coke is nothing but what? Heating the coal in absence of O2 is called as what? Coke, right? So these are the secondary source of what? Your solid fuel. Okay. Then liquid fuel. Liquid fuel are again two types. Which one? Primary and secondary. Primary source is what? That is the crude oil which is extracted from the earth crust, right? Again the vegetable oil. This is the primary source, means naturally available. Then it is passed into the industry and their secondary source is what? Petrol, diesel, rockel, naphtha, spirit, propellant. This is the secondary source of what? Your liquid fuel, right? Then gaseous fuel. Gaseous fuel are again two types. First one is the primary and secondary. So primary source is what? Natural gas is the primary source, and secondary source is what? Coal gas, right? Then producer gas, even biogas, liquefied petroleum gas, compressed natural gas. These all are the secondary source. So this is the classification of whatever chemical fuel. Okay. Now the next important point is characteristics of the fuel. The question may be asked like this: what are the good characteristics of the fuel? Characteristics of good fuel. See, your good quality of the fuel, it should satisfy the following characteristics. So number one is a good quality of fuel, it should have high calorific value. You know that calorific value which is denoted by what? CV. CV means what? Calorific value. Higher the calorific value, higher is the efficiency. Higher the efficiency means the higher is the average rate of the fuel sample, right? So good quality or ideal fuel, it should have high calorific value. Then second one is a good quality of fuel, it should have moderate velocity of the combustion, right? Then it should also have moderate ignition temperature. Moderate ignition temperature means what? At minimum spark your fuel should or your engine should be start, right? So this is the characteristics of the ideal quality of the fuel. So good quality of fuel, it should have high calorific value, it should have moderate velocity of combustion, it should have moderate ignition temperature, as well as a good quality of the fuel sample. It should contain very low percentage of the moisture. If the moisture content is very high, then your engine will be create trouble to start the engine, right? So that's why a good quality of the fuel, it should contain very low quantity of the moisture, as well as a good quality of the fuel, it should also contain less quantity of volatile matter, it should also contain less quantity of ash. So ash, what is the ash? Ash is the non-combustible inorganic matter, is known as what? Ash, right? So good quality of the fuel sample, it should containing very low ash content, low volatile matter, low moisture content. Then the selected fuel, it should be most suitable for the process, right? After burning, it does not produce the any harmful gases, right? And most important characteristics is it should be easily available in bulk quantity, it should be cheap, right? Again, a good quality of fuel, it should be require the minimum space for the storage, right? It should be easy to transport, right? It should be non-toxic, right? And after burning does not produce the any harmful gases into the environment. So this is the characteristics of the good fuel. Now I will again highlight what are the characteristics of the good quality of the fuel. Characteristics of the good fuel is what? It should have high calorific value, it should have moderate velocity of combustion, it should have moderate ignition temperature. Moderate ignition temperature means what? At minimum spark your engine should be start, that is called as the moderate ignition temperature. Then good quality of the fuel, it should contain low moisture content. What happen if the moisture content is high, then your engine will be create trouble to start the engine. That's why good quality of the fuel, it should contain low moisture content, low volatile matter, low ash content. Ash is the non-combustible inorganic matter, is known as what? Ash. So ideal fuel, it should have very less percentage of the ash, as well as a good quality of the fuel, it should be easily available in bulk quantity, it should be cheap, it is easy to store, easy to transport, and after burning does not produce the any harmful gases, as well as a good quality of the fuel, it should be require very less space for the storage. For example, the liquid fuel require the minimum space, but the gaseous fuel it require the maximum space for the storage. So this is the characteristics of the fuel. So today we have seen the definition of the fuel, classification of the fuel, and characteristics of the fuel. So I think we will conclude here. Thank you very much. Thank you.